Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
How could she do this to me? How could she do this to our family? Those were my immediate thoughts when I awoke the next morning in a hungover haze. I'm Jonathan Fremont, and until last night, I thought my wife, Susan Fremont, was a loving wife and my true love. Turns out she is a loving wife, at least in practice, only with her lover. In other words, not me. She said she's been hanging the horns on me for about a year now, and she wants me to like it? Yeah, no, not going to happen. I fought to rein in my anger and reviewed what she had said last night. She loved him, but she loved me too. She was going to spend more time with him overnight, and I would have no say in it. She said that he's a divorce lawyer, and she was just helping him. Bullshit. She said that he was her divorce lawyer if I wouldn't play ball with her. Oh, shit. I've watched enough courtroom dramas on TV to know that that's a huge conflict of interest and would get him disbarred. I smiled. Then as quickly as the smile had happened, it disappeared. I still didn't know who the guy was, and anything short of torturing Susan wouldn't get the information out of her. I briefly entertained the thought of torturing the cheating 304, but then I thought about my kids again. She's their mother. I can't do that to her. I reviewed everything I knew about the situation again. Yeah, if I didn't play by her rules, I was going to pay, so she and her lover boy could live together on my dime. Screw it. I had a friend who had gone through a divorce, and one night at the bar, he had told us how he'd gotten through it. He'd taken everything out of his accounts and opened new accounts, leaving his cheating witch with nothing to hire a lawyer. She'd gotten one to take the case pro bono, but that wasn't a good move on her part. She lost big time to my buddy Shark. She got half, since this is a no-fault state, but she didn't get alimony at all. The big difference was that he didn't have kids. I do. That means I would have to pay for child support, at the very least. Now, as far as I knew, she wasn't bringing him to the house, which meant she was going to his place. I decided to check something, though, and called my in-laws. Hi, Jonathan. What's going on? Did you want to talk to the kids? My mother-in-law asked. Sweet lady. I wondered if she knew that her daughter was a filthy 304. Probably not. Oh, nothing much. I was wondering about something, though. How many days a week do you usually watch the Rugrats? I asked. 3 or 4 times a week, usually from 8 to 5 while Susan volunteers at the homeless shelter and food bank. She replied. Shit. Susan was lying to her own parents. Thanks, Mom. I said. Just wanted to know so I could surprise her next week. Sure, don't tell her, okay? I said with false cheer. She bought it. Oh, don't worry, Han. Mum's the word. She chuckled. Thanks, Mom. I said. Talk to you later. Bye, have a great day. She said. As I ended the call, I went and looked in the mirror. I wasn't going that bald. Shit, I still had more hair than Christopher Maloney. It had started to recede, but it wasn't too bad yet. I shaved, then combed my hair, and sure enough, I did have more than Detective Stabler on SVU. Now, the beer gut would have to go. Shit, as much as she said that shit to hurt me the night before, she was right about that. How could I have let myself go like this? All that overtime, for one. 60 hours a week to bring home the bacon for my great kids and my 304 wife. The kids, I loved. The wife? Not so much anymore. Yeah, I wasn't quite as vulnerable as she would have me believe. First things first. I called and canceled all our joint credit cards and ordered new ones in my name only. Then I called my branch manager and had him take everything from our joint savings and checking and put it into a checking account in my name only. I also canceled automatic bill payments. It's called self-defense, ladies and gentlemen. My wife had such contempt and disrespect for me that she would lie through her teeth about me being defenseless against her divorce argument. She had declared war. Her mistake. But then, her a-hole lawyer but buddy had advised her on what to say. Lawyers are like cops. They will try strong-arm and scare tactics to keep average people from fighting back. The cops do it when they know you would have a valid complaint against them. The lawyers did it so they could get an out-of-court settlement. Yeah, they both underestimated me. I might be just a diesel mechanic, but that doesn't mean I'm stupid. With 4 years in Army CID, I could have been a cop or a private eye. But I really loved working on engines, and diesel engines were my specialty, even as a shade tree mechanic. Now that I was a certified diesel mechanic, I was making decent money and shitloads of overtime at time and a half. I dressed in sweats and went for a jog in order to think. Okay, I also did it in order to actually get some exercise and try to get rid of this beer gut. After my jog, I decided to call my boss and let him know that I was going to have to take a couple weeks of vacation time to work through a family crisis. He gave his okay on that, and then it was time to fine-tune my plan of action. It was going to be violent, and there would be a lot of blood. That much, I knew right away. Hell, there was a good chance I could end up in jail after all the dust had settled. I wanted to avoid that, of course. Having worked CID, there were ways I knew to pull it off, but it would still be tricky. It was time to go shopping. I showered, changed into clean duds, and hit the town. Winter was coming, so I grabbed some soft supple gloves, a black turtleneck, and a ski mask with no mouth hole. I also grabbed some Oakley shades with the matte gray finish on the front and matte black frames. Gotta love Walmart. Yes, I was going to have a lot of fun once I knew who A-hole really was. Then I hit our local I Spy shop and grabbed some voice-activated recorders and a GPS system with extended life batteries. I debated on cameras, but those wouldn't be needed yet. I also bought a gym bag for my new clothes and a pair of matte black steel-toed work boots. That wasn't such a stretch, since my old work boots were pretty worn out. That's fine, though. The new boots would be replacements for the old boots. I found a sporting goods store and bought an aluminum baseball bat and large gym bag. I decided to also buy a sport girdle for my gut, just in case. I didn't want the guy to be able to ID me because of my gut. That was for sure. I made sure I paid cash for everything. I did not want to leave a paper trail from a credit card that could be traced back to me. Then the hard part. Playing the whipped hubby when my cheating witch of a wife got home. Whenever she decided to get home, that is. I wouldn't capitulate right away, of course. Susan knows me, and she knows how bullheaded I am. I stayed out all day, until what would have been quitting time. I didn't want the witch to think anything was up, yet. I went into the house, and she wasn't even home yet. Well, screw it. I tried her cell phone, but it was turned off and went straight to voicemail. I left her a message that it was urgent, and she needed to call me immediately when she was able. I said the time and date, and told her that she needed to call me ASAP. It was time to mess with her head a little bit. She called 2 hours later, and the kids were still at their grandparents' place. She sounded out of breath. Jonathan? What's going on? She asked in a worried tone. I decided to sound broken up a bit. Come home, Susan. It's about the kids. Please just come straight home. I sobbed a bit for effect, then hung up. Susan came straight home and burst into the room from the garage less than 10 minutes after I'd called her. She saw how pale I looked. What's going on, honey? Where are the children? She asked, her eyes full of fear. What do you care? I snapped. You were too busy with your lover to worry that your children could have been hurt or dying. My voice was full of venom, and my eyes were full of hatred. Oh, the marriage was over, but I was going to screw with her head something fierce before it was all over. 2 hours, Susan. Your phone was off for 2 hours after I got home from work and called you. What if the children had been hurt? What then? Is he that much more important to you than your own children? Susan collapsed on the couch in the living room and held her face in her hands. She was sobbing pitifully. What if, instead of the children, I would have been killed? Would you care as much, Susan? I asked in a lower tone of voice. Would you care at all? Or just call your parents to tell them to keep the kids longer so you could have even more time with your boy toy? She looked up at me, her eyes red from crying, but still defiant. It's not like that, Jonathan. You know it's not like that. She sobbed. I can't believe you would do that to me. I can't believe you would use your own children as weapons against me. I slowly shook my head. I wasn't, Susan. I just wanted to let you know what could have happened. How you would be 2 hours late for something important and have to explain to everyone why you were 2 hours late. Would you lie or tell the truth? You said you wanted to keep this secret from our families. How are we supposed to do that when your cell phone is turned off? What if your parents had heart attacks and the kids were trying to reach you? What then, Susan? I can't believe you would do this to me. She shrieked. Her face had gone red with unbridled rage. Rage, and just a twinge of guilt, it seemed. That guilt was the main source of her rage. I didn't do this to you, Susan. You did it to yourself when you took up with your little boyfriend. I miss my wife, and the kids miss their mommy. I said, still keeping my voice low and even. They love their grandparents, but they love you more. That caused her to pale a bit. She knew deep down that I was right, but her stubborn pride would no more allow her to admit it than it would allow her to ever admit I was right about something. Well, since they're fine, I'm going back after I shower. She sneered at me. Just remember, you try to divorce me, I will leave you ruined and broken. There is a God. I thought as she wandered back towards our bedroom to shower in the master bath. I acted quickly, grabbing the GPS and one of the voice-activated recorders and heading out to her car. I planted the VAR under her seat and the GPS under the passenger seat. I had the receivers for both on me, so I could know where she went and what she was saying, either on the phone or talking to herself. The signal range was a good 10 miles. She would have to be all the way on the other side for me to lose the signal, and from when she called until she showed up, he did not live all the way on the other side of town. Oh, Dipfucker's day of reckoning was coming, and it was coming very soon. Once the devices were planted and my receivers were tested, I pocketed the voice receiver and placed the GPS receiver in my Ford F-250 diesel. I love that old truck. I was inside sitting with my head in my hands as Susan came out, dressed to kill. I looked up at her. Susan, I'm begging you. Please don't do this to me. Don't do this to your family. Her expression softened. I'm sorry that you can't understand, honey. I really do love you, but he needs me. She gave me an apologetic smile. No, Susan. If you were sorry, you wouldn't go. You would still be a faithful wife instead of sleeping with a man who is not your husband. I gave it to her straight. You have to understand, honey. I have to do this. He needs me. She wheedled again. Your family needs you, Susan. I emphasized family to her. Or do you no longer care about me and our children? The 3 children who were made from our love for each other. Remember them? They're the best of both of us, Susan. We made them together. Honey, I love you and our children. But he needs me right now. I promise that tomorrow, I'm all yours. She smiled, as if that would make it all better. Now was the time to play the part one had been psyching myself down for. Okay, but I don't like this. I shook my head in resignation with a sigh of defeat. The look of triumph that came to her face was quickly replaced by a condescending smile. Don't worry, honey. I love you, and I will always be yours. This is just temporary, she said. Okay, but like I said, it will be a long time coming before I am okay with you doing this, Susan. I shook my head again as she walked towards the garage. She was right. This is just temporary. Temporary until Loverboy has been dealt with. Then let her see how much she likes him when I'm done. As soon as she left, I went and grabbed the aluminum baseball bat, my old Bowie knife, and my blowtorch. I grinned evilly as I climbed into the cab of my Ford and turned on the GPS and VAR receivers. She had the radio on, and I could hear her humming a happy tune along with the radio. I slipped the torch, knife, and bat into the gym bag as I gave her a 5-minute head start. I saw by the GPS that she was only a few miles away, so I gunned my truck to life and headed over there. I pulled up to the house where she had just parked her car in his garage. Shit, she even had a garage door opener for his place. Jesus, she might as well be married to him instead of me. I felt my rage rising again, but took some deep breaths to keep it in check. I wanted to do nothing more than to bust in there and beat the shit out of him, and her too if she got in the way. At least I got his license plate number and jotted it down quickly. I always carry a pen and small notebook with me, as an old habit from my time in Army CID. I also jotted down his address. No, this would take some proper planning. I made sure that my gear was squared away. I got in the back of the cab and changed into my redneck ninja gear, as I came to think of it. I put on the girdle so my gut wasn't showing, pulled on the gloves to get rid of any fingerprints, and the sweater over that. I put on the black jeans and pulled the ski mask on over my face. This would just be recon tonight. Tomorrow would be a different matter, however. I then pulled around to the mouth of the alleyway behind the houses. I stopped a few houses down from Loverboy's and slipped out quietly. I left the bat inside the cab and went in silently through his alley gate. No problem so far. I kept my eyes open, scanning for any alarm systems. None so far. I went low and Rhodey ran to the closest window. There was light from inside, and it was damn near pitch black outside. That would give me an advantage too. I stopped just below the window and peeked over the sill. What I saw made my blood boil. The guy was sitting there stroking himself while my wife gave him a little striptease. I was now damn glad that I hadn't brought the bat with me, as I would have busted in the window and then busted his head open with my impression of Mark McGuire. I took several deep breaths to calm myself. I listened intently for any clues as to who he was. That's it, baby. I love it when you dance for me. You like that, honey? Do you like it when I strip like a little 304 for you? I really had to maintain my self-control now. I was tempted to go back to my truck and get my bat anyway. I love it. You are so hot, Susan, he exclaimed in a tone of voice that said he was having no guilt or hard times to get through. I knew she was lying through her teeth. So are you, Jim? She giggled. Jim? Huh? Well, Jim, I think that very soon, you're going to wish you had never even heard of Susan Fremont. I had heard enough. I left before I did anything stupid. I didn't want Susan there when I finally had it out with a hole. I wouldn't physically harm her, but her boy toy, on the other hand, was fair game. So he had set out to seduce my wife, knowing she was married. He had willfully and knowingly cucked me. He had somehow subverted Susan's iron will. He was dangerous, and I was going to make damn sure he never did it to anyone else's wife. Once I was back in the cab, I got out of the sweater, black jeans, and ski mask with Oakley's and the surprisingly comfortable sports girdle. It made my beer gut disappear. When I put on my normal blue jeans, t-shirt, and boots, I started my truck and hauled out of there. Jim. Okay. Now I had a first name, and I could look up his last name in the morning. I walked into my house and decided to get my lockpicks from my nightstand. I had kept them since my time in CID, and somehow I knew they would come in handy someday. I called my mom and asked if she would like for the kids to stay overnight, and she said sure. She missed her grandkids, so I promised to bring them by in the morning for her to watch. I then called Susan's folks to let them know that I would pick up the kids later in the morning, and while they loved their grandchildren, they were relieved that I would be picking them up and taking them to my mom's place. I packed a suitcase with some of my clothes and boxers and shoved it in my closet. It was getting close to the endgame, now. She was going to realize just how much she had lost within the next 72 hours. I got to bed early and awoke early the next morning. After another morning jog and an actually healthy breakfast today, I got on my old laptop and looked up Jim's address and license plate number. Mr. James Robert Stevens was his name. He was, indeed, a divorce attorney, and he also really had lost his wife in an accident several years back. So they weren't lying about that. He had, however, used it to seduce my wife. The scumbag was using his personal tragedy to steal another man's wife. My wife. Typical a-hole. The news of his loss actually made me feel even better for what I had planned for his a-holiness. He was going to know true pain. Not the pain of loss that he had suffered before, but the pain that comes with the consequences of stealing another man's wife. I went to work, as usual, still on my sabbatical, and parked in the parking lot. I then jogged to the bank and picked up my new ATM card and credit cards. Once those were in hand, I pulled $300 out of the ATM and rented a car from the Hertz rental place down the street from the bank. The car I rented was a nondescript sedan, and with my gym bag transferred from the truck to the car, I parked down the street from Loverboy's house. I then used my cell to call Susan. Surprisingly, she picked up after the first ring. "Jonathan, what's going on? Aren't you at work?" "Yeah, just on a short break right now." I lied. "I was wondering how long you were going to let the kids stay at your grandparents' house." "Until Monday." "Why?" she asked. "Well, then you won't mind if my mom watches them for a while? They're her grandkids too, and she misses them." I said it in a reasonable tone. I was getting better and better at hiding my resentment. "Okay, I have no problem with that," she said nonchalantly. The fact that she was giving in that fast was different and worried me a little. "Sounds good. I'll have Mom pick them up shortly." I lied again. "Can I expect some of your loving at home tonight when I get off work?" I asked in a hopeful tone. There was a long silence before she spoke again, and I realized she had muted her cell's microphone. "I guess so. It's only fair, after all. I told you that I was all yours tonight," she said in her even tone that said she really didn't want to. Well, soon she wouldn't really have a choice. Then her mood and tone lightened somewhat. "Does this mean that you're actually seeing things my way?" I had to swallow my bile before answering with another convincing lie. "Let's just say I'm leaning that way, but I do want equal time with you, if that's not too much to ask." "Oh, honey, I'm so happy that you're thinking clearly now," she exclaimed. Oh, she had no idea how clearly I was thinking. "Let's not jump the gun now, baby," I replied, still playing the reluctant participant. "We still need to talk tonight when you get home, but I'm going to want you for the whole weekend. I have something special planned for us." "That sounds good," she said, her tone quite a bit lighter now that she thought I was going to go along with her bullshit. "Well, if you can pull away from him early, I want you showered and douched for me when I get home from work. I'm going to take off a bit early tonight so I can get home to you. I've missed you, baby." I sounded convincing, even to myself, and that made me want to hurl. However, the last couple of days of jogging, eating right, and not drinking had helped my stamina quite a bit. I think she would definitely be pleased with me tonight. My beer gut was definitely less than it had been just a few days earlier. "Honey, I always shower and douche after I've been with him. I wouldn't disrespect you so much as to make you have sloppy seconds." She laughed, and I knew she was lying about that too. "Well, I'm going to go down on you tonight, baby. I want you to taste good and fresh for me." I laughed too. "Don't worry, honey. I will," she said. "I'll see you tonight." She ended the call, and I put my cell phone back in my pocket. I changed quickly in the back seat of the sedan, and once again I was the redneck ninja, only without my ski mask and shades on yet. I slumped down in the car to wait. I was parked the opposite direction than she would go home, but I couldn't be too careful. Susan isn't stupid, at least as far as that goes. She was stupid to think that I would just roll over for her bullshit, however. I started the car and pulled into the driveway of the abandoned house a few doors down and across the street from Jim the A-hole's place. I maneuvered the mirror so I could easily see his driveway and garage and slumped down in the seat to wait. I was prepared to wait for hours if necessary. Susan surprised me when she left after only a few hours. She texted me and said she was leaving now and would be home clean and fresh and waiting for me. I smiled grimly, then backed out of the driveway and followed her at a safe distance. I wanted to make damn sure she wasn't lying to me. Sure enough, she pulled into our driveway 10 minutes later, and I just drove on by and back to his place. I parked in the alley behind the houses again and slipped in through his back gate as I had done the previous night. Only this time, I had my bat on me, and it was going to get a workout. I made sure my ski mask and shades were on, and decided that it was indeed time. I looked in his bedroom window, and the lover boy was asleep. I smiled grimly, then tried the back door. It was unlocked, so I didn't even need to pick the lock. What an arrogant a-hole. Fine by me. Now, some of my favorite movies are the Dark Knight trilogy starring Christian Bale, Michael Caine, and a bunch of other great actors. One of the parts one liked the most was how he would change his voice as Batman. I was planning to do the same. I had my full redneck ninja thing going on now, and when I walked into his bedroom, he was still out like a light. Apparently, he had spent all night having sex with my wife. Well, that was going to end now. I dropped the gym bag, took the bat out, cleared my throat loudly, and he opened his eyes blearily at first. Then he saw the bat in my hands, and he freaked out. I brought the bat down on his knee first, shattering his kneecap. Enemy mobility was now greatly compromised. He screamed, and I brought the bat down again, shattering his other kneecap. Enemy mobility was now nil. I smiled under my mask. I lowered my voice to a growl. How does it feel, lover boy? Jonathan is a friend of mine, and he even told me not to do anything to you if I found out who you were. Unfortunately for you, I have my own sense of justice. I punctuated this with a swing to his balls and heard bone crack as his pelvis broke. Please don't kill me. He screamed through the pain. I'll do anything you want. I have money. I can pay you. He cried tears of pain. I don't want your money. I growled back. I want you to never so much as think about Susan Fremont again. If you do, I will return, and you will not be so lucky next time. This time was just a warning. If you report this to the police and Jonathan gets in trouble, I will return, and I will kill you. You've already ruined his marriage. I punctuated that with another swift swing to his balls. From what I'd seen the night before, he wasn't even as well hung as I was. He was in shape, though. Shape I would be in soon, but by then, he wouldn't be able to compete. I then swung the bat once more, breaking his left arm just below the shoulder. I found his cell phone and bashed it with the bat, then bashed both of his landline telephones. I did not want him to call Susan, or anyone else for that matter. I walked out back and slipped out the gate and into the sedan. I changed again, then drove to a quickie mart across town, where I dumped the bat. I put gas in the gasket in the trunk of the sedan, then drove out of town a ways and torched the rest of the gym bag. Once that was done, I wiped my fingerprints from the torch and threw it on the fire. It was a shame to burn those Oakley shades, since they were pretty expensive. But that was okay. They were well worth the money I'd spent. Then I went to a divorce attorney of my own and had her draw up papers against Susan. I was suing for full custody of the kids and 75% of everything. I would pay her no alimony, nor would I ask her for child support. As long as she played ball, I would not tell her folks the real reason we were getting a divorce. I told my attorney that I would have an admission of her affair recorded very soon. Then I drove back to the rental place and turned in the car. I thanked him, then jogged back to the diesel shop and went inside. I told my boss that I could work the rest of the shift, but needed to leave early to meet Susan. I would still need a few days off coming up, and he was okay with that. Once I was done with the work in the shop, I decided to buy a prepaid cell phone on the way home. I activated it, called 911, and in my growling voice, told them what had happened to Mr. James Robert Stevens and gave them his address. I then tossed the phone out the window and into the canal that ran alongside the road. No, I didn't want him to die. I just wanted him to feel the pain I had felt, but for the rest of his days. He had sex with my wife, so I had messed his life. It was a fair trade, I thought. I pulled the voice recorder out of my pocket and turned it on. The following conversation with my wife is not to be taken at face value on my part. I do not approve of her affair, now or ever. I then switched it off and replaced it in my pocket. I pulled into the garage, and before going inside, I removed the GPS and voice-activated recorders from Susan's car. I threw them in my truck, and that was that. I went inside and reactivated my pocket recorder before coming up behind Susan and putting my arms around her waist. That smells good, baby, I said, kissing the side of her neck. She was cooking some steaks on the stove and already had mashed potatoes and green beans made. Thanks, honey. I am so glad that you're more accepting of the situation now. She cooed, then turned her face up to kiss my lips. About that, baby, I said. Would you really have divorced me if I didn't go along with it? I kept the tone light, as if I was over her threats. I wouldn't want to, but I would have in a heartbeat if you tried to deny me my lover. I'm sorry, honey. I wish it could have been different. I didn't want to threaten you, please believe that. I do love you, you know. Would you really have taken my kids and not let me see them, though? That would be kind of cruel, wouldn't it? I once again kept my tone light, as if I was accepting her demands now. She sighed. Yes, I would have. It was at his urging that I make it as painful for you as possible if you wanted a divorce. I'm so sorry, honey. I never meant it to sound like that. Bullshit. Which, well, at least I have you for the weekend, and Mom has the kids until Monday. I'm taking Monday off, if you can find it in your heart to be with me that day too. Okay, but Tuesday night, I have to meet him again, and I will be with him until Wednesday morning. Then I will be home to take care of our children. Wow, what a great mother. Not. Baby, I have to ask one more time. Is there nothing I can do to get you to stop seeing him? I asked in a defeated tone. She sighed again, and kept her voice soft and condescending. I'm sorry, honey. I have to see this through. Don't worry, though. I will still make time for you and the kids whenever possible. Oh, hell. This was pure gold for getting her declared as an unfit mother. But tonight she was mine. My lawyer had said that she would have the papers ready by Monday, and I was going to have her served either here or at the hospital if she found out about Loverboy before then. All I had to do was make the call on Monday morning. Dinner was fantastic. I would miss her cooking. After dinner, I showered and took her in my arms. I made love to her that night, did her hard and fast. That was something we hadn't done in a very long time. She climaxed over and over, thanks to my improved stamina and lack of alcohol. I did her good. I did her deep. She was cross-eyed after some of the most intense climax she'd ever had. So, I wasn't good in bed, was I? Well, now I was going to show her just how good I could be. I popped a Viagra, started again, but that wasn't all. I marked her. I gave her several hickeys on her braids and neck, and down on her stomach and inner thighs too. I was reclaiming her, and she was loving every second of it. It was only after we were done, and she went to the bathroom, that she screamed in shock at the marks I had left on her. She came storming back into the bedroom, where I was laying with a serene smile on my face. How can I possibly see him now? He doesn't want me marked, she shouted, her face an incredulous mask. Well, you're my wife, and I want you marked as mine. If he doesn't like it, that's not my problem. I shrugged. You never said not to, and you sure enjoyed it while I was doing it to you. That actually shut her up. Her face softened as she sat on the bed and took my hand. Jonathan, that was the best we've ever had, and even better than with him. Wow. I knew she wasn't just stroking my ego now. She had climaxed more times in the last 4 hours than she ever had before, I'm sure. I could feel the difference from when she used to fake them for my benefit. Okay, so I wasn't that good in bed before. But now I had some motivation to make it as good for her as I could make it. It seemed to have worked. Susan, I just pray it's enough to get you to stop seeing him. I love you, and want to spend the rest of my life with you. All I ask is that you try to see my point of view here. You've been with this guy for over a year now, and I just want my wife back. I said, my eyes pleading with her. Here it was. Endgame. I had become damn good at hiding my emotions, but had sex with her with anger instead of tenderness. Hatred instead of love. But damn it, I deserved an Emmy, a Golden Globe, and an Oscar for putting up with her bullshit. Oh, honey, I'm still your wife. I love you so much. Just a few more months, and this thing will have run its course. Then I will be all yours again. She smiled happily at me. It wasn't condescending like it had been. She had been prepared before, just in case I decided to divorce her. Now, she would get blindsided good. The next day, she was like the Susan I had married again. She cooked, cleaned the house, and actually initiated sex with me that night. I told her that I had taken Saturday off, and Monday too, so we could be together more. She was actually having fun with me. I admit, I was having fun with her too, but now that I had seen her true colors, I wasn't going to be drawn in again by her facade. That night, I renewed the marks I'd made on her Friday night, and she didn't even protest afterward. It wasn't until Monday that the shit hit the fan. I pleaded with her one last time not to go back to him. Instead, she grabbed her cell phone and took it into the living room. I told her that I was going to pick up the kids, and she said that was fine. I went and picked up my boy and 2 girls from Mom's house, and she thanked me for letting them stay with her. On the way home, we stopped at Burger King, and I bought them lunch. They loved it. Sure, it's not McDonald's, but oh well. The food tastes a lot better than Mickey D's. We were just getting ready to leave when my cell phone rang with Susan's ringtone. Hey, babe. Miss me already? I said with a chuckle into the phone. I took the kids to BK for some lunch, and we're on the way home now. Jonathan, what is the meaning of this? She screamed. Oh, did I fail to mention that she had been served while I was picking my kids up? Oh, you must have gotten the papers. I said. Sorry, baby. We can talk about it when we get home. Okay? We have something to talk about. I ended the call before she could retort and turned my phone off. I pulled into the garage and took the kids inside. They were hanging all over me, and Susan, in spite of the divorce papers, was actually happy to see them. They ran to their mommy and asked her where she had been. She made up the usual lie that she was volunteering a lot, then actually told the truth when she said that we had a special mommy and daddy only weekend. I told them that they should go play in their rooms, as mommy and I needed to talk. Once they were out of sight, I took Susan into the basement. Okay, now the kids won't hear us. I said, Susan, I am going to divorce you. I'm sorry, but I can't take this anymore. I have asked you time and time again not to continue this affair, and now I have your own admission of the affair on tape. I will be sending that tape to my attorney, and she will submit it into evidence. As you could see from the divorce papers, I am suing for full custody, and the fact that you have been neglecting your family will come out at the trial. You also admitted that your lover was more important to you than your children. You will most likely be deemed an unfit mother, thanks to your affair with whoever he is. If he's acting as your attorney, I'm pretty sure that he will be disbarred, according to my own attorney. It's a severe breach of ethics for a lawyer to sleep with his or her clients, especially in case of divorce. She was stunned. Her mouth hung open as she struggled to find the words. But I thought you were okay with it now, she exclaimed incredulously. Susan, I realize now that I never knew you. I also realize now that you never knew me. I did everything I could over the years to make you happy. I bought you this house. I bought you your car. I bought you a lot of your jewelry. I spent more than we could really afford, but I made up for it with the overtime. Everything I did was to make your life and our kids' lives better. I'm sorry now that I couldn't do that and show you all the affection and love that I should have. I really did love you, Susan. Unfortunately, your affair killed that love that I had for you. I never said I was okay with it. You know, I gave you one final chance this morning to give him up completely. I begged you to do it. If you had, I wouldn't have had you served this morning. Instead, you called him this morning before I went to pick the kids up. I know you were. I'm sorry for this, Susan. I shook my head ruefully. I was lying through my teeth, of course. I didn't want her to know that I had been plotting this all along. In the divorce decree, I offered her generous visitation with the kids, either under my supervision or Mom's or Grandpa's supervision. The next part would be difficult, but I had to inform Mom and Grandpa of the impending divorce. I called Mom first and let her know that I would be moving out and had filed for divorce from Susan. I explained the entire situation and told her that I had recorded her admission of the affair and how she put her lover before her husband and children. Mom agreed to be my babysitter while I was at work each day. I gathered the children together with Susan, and I explained to them that Mommy and I wouldn't be living together anymore, but would always be there for them. I told them that we would be moving in with Grandma, and they were happy about that. Mom had a few rooms at her house since Dad died, and we would be staying there with her. We got packed up fairly quickly, and I told Susan that she would always be welcome at Mom's house with us, as long as she didn't bring her boyfriend with her. She looked utterly defeated. It was 2 days later that she discovered that old Jimmy boy was in the hospital. I was back at work when she called. Hey, Susan. What's up? I asked. You son of a bitch. She screamed into my ear. You nearly killed him. Whoa there. What are you talking about? I snapped back. Yeah, my performance was worth multiple awards. I had confusion down pat. You know who? She screamed. You nearly killed Jim. He's never going to be the same again. She was crying now. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Who's Jim? I asked. Susan, you aren't making any sense. You didn't try to kill him? She asked incredulously. Kill who? I asked in an exasperated tone. I don't know any Jim except for Jim Barnes, and he's standing right next to me right now. Jim Barnes is one of my work and drinking buddies. I had filled him in on what was going on, and he had just grinned evilly when I told him about the lawyer lover boy and what I'd done to him. Jim was now trying mightily not to laugh as he overheard my side of the conversation. Jim was the guy I told you about before, whose wife cheated on him and their divorce had been fugly. Oh my God, she exclaimed as she realized that I wasn't going to admit it and that she couldn't prove that I did it. Susan, is some guy named Jim your boyfriend? I asked calmly. If he's almost dead, it couldn't be Jim here. The only thing likely to kill Jim here is a heart attack. I grinned at Jim, who couldn't hold his laughter anymore, and ran into the office. Well, he said he was attacked, but he didn't know who did it. Susan admitted between sobs. He had his balls crushed. Oh my God. I acted. Honestly, if he was the man who stole you from me, then I can't say that I'm sorry to hear that. Susan, God's honest truth, I didn't have anything to do with what happened to him, but I would love to buy whoever did it a beer. Did you ever think that he'd seduce someone else's wife too? You couldn't be with him all the time, you know. Ah, the seeds of doubt had been sown. I smiled. You don't think he would? She started, but I interrupted. Why not? I asked. You said yourself that he was depressed because his wife died. He used that to seduce you, Susan. No, it wasn't. She stopped, then thought about it. She took a while to think of everything that had happened in their affair. Oh my God, you're right. She shrieked. That a-hole. Suddenly, the heavenly chorus declared through Susan's voice that I was right. She, who never admitted that I was right, had now done so. Susan, mark this day on the calendar for me. The day you actually admitted that I was right about something. I laughed out loud. Yeah, she didn't like that. In spite of the fact that she didn't like it, she didn't fight me on the divorce. Mom testified that she could provide babysitting services for my children while I was at work, and the judge took everything into account, including the pattern of behavior over the past year that Susan had been having the affair with Jim Stevens. While she had left the kids with responsible adults, she had done so in order to carry on her affair in secret. The judge didn't quite declare her unfit, but put me as primary custodian. He declared Susan as secondary, but only on the stipulation that she not bring her lovers around the children. I wasn't thrilled with that, but I was satisfied. Hell, before she took up with Jim the a-hole, Susan was a great mother. Now she would have a chance to be a great mother again. Then the judge told me that I would only have to pay child support, and only for the time they spent with Susan. Susan was ordered to get a job. In college, she had majored in accounting, so she could get a job easily. The house was sold, and we split it 50-50ths. Our joint accounts, which I had absconded with at the beginning, however, were split 75/25 in my favor. Yes. When Susan tried to complain, the judge looked at her and said, "Mrs. Fremont, do I need to remind you that you very nearly lost all custody of your children due to your own selfishness? Now, get a job." The same judge handled my alienation of affection lawsuit against James Robert Stevens. He actually took it seriously, and based on Susan's confession and testimony, surprisingly on my behalf, I was awarded $500,000 in the settlement. Yeah, I like that judge. When the final gavel clacked, and we were officially divorced, and I was $500,000 richer thanks to her efforts, I took Angie, my attorney, out for drinks at the Silver Spar. I had continued to exercise and eat right, and had cut out almost all alcohol. But on this night, I wanted to at least have a beer or two. My pony keg beer go was back down to 6-pack apps. Yeah, I'd gotten back in shape during the whole mess. I knew I would have to be there for my kids, and I would be back on the market. I just hoped and prayed that I could find someone who wasn't as shallow and selfish as Susan. Angela Johnson is a gorgeous woman. Her dark chocolate skin looked delicious. It had been almost 7 months since I'd last had sex with Susan, just before blindsiding her with the divorce papers. During that time, Angie and I had grown pretty close. We were more than just attorney-client. We'd become friends. So as friends, we went to the bar for a couple of beers. "So, what are your plans now, Jonathan?" Angie asked while we were swigging our beers. "Get back to work and raise my kids as well as possible. I found a smaller house with only 1 story and 4 bedrooms. It's a lot cheaper than that monster Susan made me buy about 3 years ago." I shrugged. "Are you all moved in yet?" she asked. "Yeah, moved in a couple weeks ago and closed on the house. It's closer to work, and the kids love it." I smiled. "What about you? You took on my case knowing I might lose a lot, but you took it anyway. Thanks for that." I clinked bottles with her. "Well, I've been divorced for about 4 years now since my ex got caught cheating on me." She must have seen the look of surprise on my face. "Han, why do you think I took your case with such a hefty discount?" "I don't like cheaters." I chuckled. "Good, because neither do I." I gave her my best smile. "Since we're paid up, do you mind if I fire you as a client?" she asked with a smile. Her question took me aback. "Why?" I asked. "Because I don't date clients." She shrugged with her smile growing. I smiled back. "Well, then consider me fired. Would you like to go to dinner?" "No, I want you to come to my place so I can cook you something," she said. "We've been dating now for 6 months, and I've never been happier." For a high-powered divorce attorney, Angie is not high maintenance, especially compared to Susan. She loves me, loves my kids, and loves me. She dotes on the children, and even though Susan is still their mom, they call Angie Mommy too, which we find adorable. Angie has moved in with us, and Susan joins us for dinner some nights. When she takes the kids for the weekend, Angie and I fall into bed together and have sex with each other silly. It's a great life, so far. As far as the a-hole goes, he never recovered from what I did to him. He was left penniless and alone after all of his wife's insurance money went to paying his medical bills, court fees, and my alienation of affection lawsuit. Good. To hell with him. Susan seems to be doing much better now, since her hormones were really out of whack, at least according to her doctor. She's been taking supplements and seems to be on much more of an even keel now. She has a steady job at an accounting firm in our town and is making some decent money. I've been promoted to supervisor of the diesel shop and make as much now for 40 hours as I used to for 60. I now have plenty of time to spend with my kids and with a new woman in my life. Susan will have to live with the shit she's done, and that's good enough for me. She blames herself for everything now, and I'm not even going to try to console her. She doesn't even date, since she says she's still in love with me. Bullshit, but whatever. She'll have those regrets for the rest of her life, and part of me hopes she chokes on them. Am I still a little bitter? Yeah, I have to admit that I am. Luckily, Angie is here to help take my mind off the shit my ex put me through. Yeah, life is pretty damn good now. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.